Hey VC, what's up? It's me, yours truly. I am back to post a quick video here. This is going to be a video response to Julian Lopez, his 100 subscribers contest. Um, I know kind of a little bit of a different angle here, but I was in here doing some cooking and I had already pulled out the albums to his contest, or for his questions, I should say, for his contest. And I just kind of thought, well, if I'm sitting here being bored, having to stir over and over and over, might be a good opportunity to do the video while I'm sitting here stirring. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump on board and do a response to his contest. 100 subscribers contest. I think he's at like 148 or 150 now, but when he started it, he was at 100. So um, he had kind of five nice, right to the point kind of questions. A couple of them made me think, though. I did change my answer a couple of times, but yeah, overall, kind of some really good questions, and I'll just kind of dive right in. His first question was, I don't have them written in front of me, but I can really almost recall just the albums that I have sitting here. His first question was, share an album from like your childhood, something that was kind of significance in your childhood and so forth. So I know I've told that story a few different times at different points throughout my time in the VC, and it's one that I actually like to tell a lot when it comes to my childhood and kind of musically what took place, because I almost kind of feel like I tell the story in third person. Like I listen to it and I think it's a cool story because I don't think it's about me. I think it's like something else. But just again, they're kind of, because I know I've told it before, but screw it, I like telling it anyway. Basically where I grew up was in a project of an east side of a bad part of town, the whole nine, and my mom and dad busted their tails, did what they had to do to say this is not the life we're willing to accept, and they got us out of that. And we ended up moving, a state or two over into kind of straight middle class. I was the only black kid within a literally, I don't know how many mile radius, but there were no others in the neighborhood whatsoever. So I went from this R&B, gospel, you know, I guess when I was really young, kind of disco, that's almost even too young for me to remember, background. And then all of a sudden I'm thrown into this heavy metal, hair metal, hard rock, classic rock, the world like overnight, like we're literally in the middle of a school year. So it was just like a total culture shock overnight. So when I think about influential albums and stuff like that from my childhood, oftentimes I think about the ones that were involved, especially early on with that transition. Now, I've mentioned a bunch of times throughout my years in the VC that Billy Idol's Rebel Yell was one of the most significant albums there. That was the first album I ever saw on MTV that took me to New Wave, as well as U2's With or Without You. So those were two of my first really turns from knowing everything that I knew. But outside of that, there were two other albums that really had a significant impact on me at that point in time. That was still kind of overall the time frame when I was learning about AC/DC and Led Zeppelin and The Who and all this stuff that my new friends were showing me. But one of the albums that really kind of stuck was this one right here, which was Twisted Sister Stay Hungry. And this is one that just out of all the albums and things that they were playing and making dubs for me and all of that, this is one of the ones that just, like for an entire summer, it was just on constant repeat. And, back then we all had our boom boxes and everything. And literally for that summer, we all ended up getting this cassette and it never left any of our tape recorders. And it's just an album that we played to death. So when I talk about that Billy Idol and Joshua Tree, or not even necessarily Joshua Tree as much as With or Without You, that one track, this was really kind of the first full album that I really kind of dove into from front to back and loved every song and learned every song, and was just a big part of what spawned into all of my love for hair metal and hard rock and all that great stuff. So that's definitely a very, very impactful album from a childhood perspective. Make sure I put those in a safe place. And another one, I actually want to kind of put two into this one. because again, before the move was made, so back when we were living, where we started there, again, I didn't know anything about any rock music or anything like that. The only rock song that I knew up to that point in time was Another One Bites the Dust. I didn't know any other rock or anything whatsoever. And I'm watching TV one day, and I turn it on to this, I don't know what it is, but it's kind of like a little concert footage thing. And these guys start playing this song and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, I'm just completely mesmerized. I have like no idea what this stuff is or whatever else. But it ended up being the Neil Young Live in Berlin. It was his performance of the song Sample and Hold off of this album here, which is Trans. And it was just, it just completely and totally blew me away. And again, I had no idea what I was listening to. I didn't know much of anything about, guitar licks, especially with the whole voice box thing he was doing on top of it. I just knew that was some cool stuff. And so, yeah, that song, just hearing that one song was extremely impactful to me. And that was before I was even introduced to the world of rock. And then fast forward, about 15 years later, 15, 20 years later, I end up discovering the actual album. So definitely a very, very impactful album there. Now, the second question was an album that people might be shocked to know you own or that you have, or people wouldn't think that you would have. And it's kind of a hard question for me to some degree, because those of you that know me in the VC, there's nothing I own that would really shock you. And for those that don't know me and maybe just, saw me for the first time, almost everything in my collection would shock them. So there's not a lot of in between. But I thought maybe the one that jumps out the most, and probably the one I've maybe caught the most flack from VC members, friendly, fun, nice flack, but still I caught a lot of it in the comments, is most people don't expect to come in and see this album in my collection. And even more so if they do see it, there's even other things that they kind of say on top of it. So I would say Justin Bieber. Heck, even I have issues with myself having this album in my collection. But fact of the matter is, there's one or two tracks on here that when I listen to it, sounds neat, has a melody that rings nice in my ear, kind of a fun type of thing. As much as I have issues with Justin Bieber, I have this album. So I would probably say that's the one that people would be a little more shocked or funny to see that I have in my collection. Moving right along, the next one was some of your favorite live albums, or favorite live album. I may have these out of order, so forgive me if I do, but so I actually picked two. There's some where I could say there's better live songs that I really like, but as far as like a live album from start to finish, the two that I would have to go with would be Jimi Hendrix and The Experience live at Monterey. Fantastic album. A lot of great stuff on here. Everything from Hey Joe to Foxy Lady to Wild Thing, Purple Haze, and of course his awesome cover of Bob Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone. So that is a fantastic must-have live album. And the next one that I would actually pull out as well is going to be Fleetwood Mac, The Dance. The Eagles' Hell Freezes Over could definitely make its way in, but and then also, of course, Judas Priest, Japan. That's a very great live album. But Fleetwood Mac's The Dance is another one that definitely has to go in there. Now, oftentimes when people talk about, or maybe I should say when I talk about great live albums or live albums I like, it's not so much that like I like the music better on this album than other live albums, even though it is Fleetwood Mac, so that's maybe not the best example to use. But the thing about it with me is that I don't typically like a lot of live albums. It's just like whenever, if the live performance on that album is not actually taking the song up a notch, but if I feel like I'm losing stuff because you're trying to do a live recording, most cases I don't like live albums. Because I'm one of those people that when I get into a song, there's little nuances here or there that just is really like the crux of the song for me, and I'll literally be listening to that song, waiting for those little nuances to come about, and they typically have a lot of influence with me with songs that I like and don't like. So sometimes when you get into the live thing, it takes away a ton. So like the dance and Hell Freezes Over, I mentioned by the Eagles, and the Live at Monterey, I feel like these are albums that really keep the greatness of the studio versions of those albums, and then also takes it up a notch by adding in some of the different live qualities. And this is actually a fantastic one too. So those are the two that I would pick. Let's see, two more questions. One was a solo artist or an artist that went solo that, put out a great album or did well, blah, blah, blah. And one that came to mind, since I don't pull out a lot of my hip hop stuff too often, I decided to go with Ice Cube, America's Most Wanted, which was his solo album right after he left NWA. So, I mean, he had a ton of great albums after he left NWA, which is fantastic. But, to leave a group that was at the peak that NWA was at the time, and to be able to come out and do what he did was really fantastic. And again, just kind of a great one to dive into, to pull out some stuff out of my hip hop collection there. So that's what I'm going to go with that one. And last but not least, just kind of an album recommendation. So again, I tried to maybe pick something that wasn't things that I've pulled out a bunch of times before. And one album that I think is really fantastic, and maybe it's not because it's all necessarily that great, but maybe just because it impressed me so much. I am a huge fan of 60s R&B, 70s R&B, and 80s R&B. Love that stuff, cannot get enough of it. Going into the early 90s, so-so, a few things here or there. Going into the 2000s, most of that R&B, I could care less if it ever got wiped off the face of this earth. So I'm not a huge fan of that genre. Not genre, but that decade of that genre. And this album right here, which came out in 2012, is Miguel's Kaleidoscope Dream. And talk about an album that just came through and made me go, like, thank God someone mentioned this album to me. Because, for an R&B type of album that came out in the late 2012, this album just completely shocked me. Easily moved its way up to being one of my, especially in recent history, most favorited, one of my just favorite R&B albums. He nailed it on this, and so many great tracks. I mean, almost the entire album from front to back is absolutely a perfection. So for someone who is as skeptical about modern day R&B as I am, and just quite frankly just hate most of the crap that's out there, it was very surprising that this album came along and just shocked me the way that it did. Matter of fact, I probably listened to this more than any other R&B album that I have in my collection, at least over the past year or so. I think that's a pretty safe statement. I listen to this all the time. So this is one that I definitely recommend, and again, maybe everyone else already thought it was fantastic, and I'm the one kind of catching up, so maybe it's not much of a recommendation, but love this album. Really, really great stuff. So, all right, so there you go, man. Again, congratulations on the 100 subs. So I know you're already halfway to 200 now, so that's awesome. And as always, VC, let me know what you think, and we will talk to you guys soon. All right, take care, guys.